But that's anybody that's listening to this. They have some way, like you said, they have some process that they've built. Find where you've been successful in another part of your life and just try to use that to your advantage. If you need to consciously think of it, if you're not confident, I wasn't confident that I could pull this off at all.
Welcome to the Meaningful Work Podcast, your source for ideas, inspiration, and tools for unleashing your best, most fulfilling work yet. Now, your host, Josh Schneider.
Yes! Welcome to the show today. Today's episode has been years in the making. Absolute years. I can remember sitting in a hand-me-down van saying, one day I'm going to do a podcast episode with Nick Hendrix. And today is that day. Now, Nick is a procurement agent for one of the country's largest home builders, Pulte Homes, and we're going to talk about some of the details of his job. But the reason why I wanted Nick on the show was because this man has a heart, a capacity, and an ability when you have proximity to him, whether in relationship or conversation. When you're talking with Nick Hendrix, things come to the surface in beautiful ways, in breakthrough ways, in ways that make you see your life in the world differently. Now, Nick is also a purveyor of fine tequila. I don't know if it's the basis of our relationship, but welcome to the show, Nick Hendrix.
Josh, it's great to be here. I can't think of a better introduction that I've ever had in my whole life.
That's not true, but listen. What we're here to do today is to talk about your job, your role, some of the challenges and how you found ways to overcome them, how you stay productive, what kind of systems you have. And then truly, we want to get to the core of what's your tingly feeling at work. What's the thing? What's the project? What's the experience that lights you up in such a way that your performance follows that excitement? So if we could just, start there. When you think about your work, your role, your day, what part or what parts of this work truly, because when you hear the word procurement, before people get to the end of the word meant, they've actually fallen asleep. But the truth is, it's valuable, it's critical to a company's success. And obviously you found joy in doing it. So I want to hear from you, what part or parts of this work truly get you excited?
Well, thanks, Josh. I'm excited to be here. And you're right. When I first heard procurement agent, I kind of said, well, what the heck is that? Some other people might know it as a purchasing agent in any company. When you deal with goods and services, you need products, right? So in our industry, we are the third largest production builder in the US. And so when we build a home, Pulte doesn't keep interior doors or windows or carpet or tile or kitchens in a warehouse somewhere and bring it, to the job site. What we do is we work with local trade partners to provide service. And as an agent, it's my job to create relationships with those vendors, to structure deals and contracts with them, to provide goods and for them to provide labor. And then my biggest role, if they were saying, well, why are we paying this guy X number of dollars to come in every day? It's to safeguard the margin of our company. Without margin, companies go out of business. So I set out every day to see how can we make our vendors are profitable, to make sure that we have a good relationship with them, but mostly to make sure that our company, Pulte Homes, is profitable, is successful, because the better that I do my job, it creates opportunities for bonuses, for promotions, for raises, not just in my team or for myself, but for every single person in our division. So I take my job very seriously because hundreds and hundreds of people's success and their paycheck is based on the deals that my department and me personally structure with our vendors to make sure we're getting the best price, the best service, to ensure the reputation of Pulte, but also to make sure that we are creating a strong, successful business with plenty of margin to help us grow. So
okay, so I've got to ask, when you read the job description and you originally came in on this role, Was there anything about safeguarding the margin? Did it say that in specific, or is that terminology that you found to kind of inspire you or to create clarity for your role?
Wow, dude, that is a great insight because it was nowhere on the job description. This job description was long. It was like
And
pages.
boring, I imagine.
Yeah, and nothing really that I do. But yeah, I guess you're right because I have to walk into an office every day and say, okay, am I going to give them 120% for the next 8 or 9 or 10 hours, or am I just going to kind of fiddle around and get by? So I guess I have given myself that meaning, a reason to show up and put a little extra effort in.
And I think that's interesting because I imagine some of your coworkers might feel differently, or others in that same role. I mean, any job, and what we've seen is that the most exciting parts of our day or week, they're not happening every hour
Mhm.
on schedule. What's happening every hour is you get that next meeting alert coming through, bing, 15 minutes, bing, 10 minutes, and you're like,
Right.
another meeting.
Mhm.
And it's these moments, or these statements like safeguard the margin, that maybe inspire us. So if you could think back over the last month and maybe share what part or what experience or what project or what email, what part of safeguarding the margin, or just any part of your role kind of really, you felt the excitement of that thing come through.
When you asked that question, one thing came right to mind, and it was odd because, you and I, we've known each other for a long time, and our roles, our experiences, the work that we've done has changed a lot over the last 10 years, right?
For sure.
And before, excitement might be jumping on a plane to another country, going to an event, meeting the CEO of this, company and doing some work right hand in hand with them. So that's what used to be excitement. Now in this role, because it is a change for me, it's different within the last year and a half. Excitement feels almost more like scared. It almost feels more like stress. But when you said excitement, the first thing that came to mind was we have a huge vendor of ours was trying to put a 25% increase in price on one of our products that we use in every single home, in every single division in the company. And so our margins are, I don't even realize it, but this is how I think about it. Our margins can't sustain a 25% increase.
Yeah.
So that excitement was also like, oh my gosh, if I don't succeed here by warding off this increase, we're in big trouble.
Hmm.
And so I began looking at it. I tried to draw back on some of the training that I've got. And I had to ask myself, how could I turn this increase actually into a savings opportunity for our company? Instead of this costing us $1 million, how could this save us $500,000? That kind of scenario. And so that's something that I've been working on for the last 4 weeks, kind of nonstop figuring out. And it got really exciting when I finally put it all together. I put all the pricing in. I was able to check all the boxes from multiple parties. And I was able to slide a piece of paper across the desk to my boss's boss, who asked for an update on, must have been last Wednesday. And I slid the piece of paper across. He said, so what's this going to do to us? And I said, how would you like to save $5,000 in that community? How would you like to save $45,000 in that community? How'd you like to save $125,000 here? And he said, I like that very much. And I said, well, that's what you got. And that moment, up until then, it wasn't exciting. I felt so stressed, so frustrated, so angry. Like what do you want from me?
Okay, so we know that there's this outcome that happens out of all of this work that you've done. Talk to me about the hours or the days. How, like, what kind of productivity or what kind of approach? What story did you tell yourself? It's easy to think of a story when we're going for a run and we're like, okay, I will stop at 2.5 miles. Then we get to 2.5 miles and we're like, keep going. And we found ways to trick ourselves. And I think the same thing happens at work. When we're finding that best work, when we're on the path to producing the best outcome, we find ways to trick ourselves, or to just stay on task, focused. Not the overarching fear of, I'm going to lose my job, but you're driven to safeguard the margin. You're driven by this beautiful outcome that may or may not happen. But how do you stay focused in those challenging moments, or how do you overcome those obstacles?
Man, that's really great. I think the idea, one term you used was trick yourself. I think that like, hey, I'm only going to go for 2 miles, and then you get to 2 and it's just like, how about half a mile more? And, by the time you're done tricking yourself, you've ended up going, 4 or 5, 6 miles.
Right. And then you're like, I'm going to do a half marathon next month.
Yes. Which the guy in the office across from me, he did that. He hadn't run in 2.5 years, signed up for half marathon, forgot to ever train, got the alert on his phone. The race was tomorrow, and went and did it anyway. And he could barely walk for about a week, but he finished. A little chafing was involved, but he did finish. For me, I started to use the term unreasonable because I heard that word pop out of my mouth when I first got this assignment, and my boss kind of cast a little bit of a vision, like, hey, you got to take care of this. We can't take, these increases here, here, and here. And I walked back to my office after saying, oh yeah, I'm on it. I got it. I walked back to my office, threw my stuff on my desk, and I'm like, wow, this is freaking unreasonable, and I was just like, okay, well, what if I was unreasonable? What if I wasn't thinking, well, this has to happen and there's no way that they'll agree to this, or they'll, I had to start being unreasonable. So when I would go in, the project was really large. It involved hundreds of communities and dozens of vendors. So I had to, when I kind of got done being overwhelmed by it, I had to kind of zero in and focus and say, where am I going to start? What vendor has the most market share? And I picked one. And I said, if I can do a good job on this vendor, even if I screw up the other several vendors, this is the big cookie. This is 50% of our communities are tied up with this vendor. And so I started there, and I gave that vendor about 80% of my entire project time. And that's where I got most of the savings. And when I got unreasonable with them and it worked, I took that a little bit unreasonable attitude, and I was very respectful. I was very, I built these relationships, so I was able to draw on the relationship capital that I'd built over the last 1.5 years. But once I did that, I was able to go to another vendor and just start squeezing them a little bit for here or there. I was like, well, one of our other vendors was able to do that. They're like, Nick, there's no way we could do that. I go, well, why don't you just go see what you can do? I think that you guys have a lot more weight in this arena than you think. And they're like, okay, we're going to try to do that. Oh, well, we couldn't do this, but we could do that. Okay. So I just started chipping away at the other vendors using the momentum I'd kind of built from this one big project. So, I tried to bite off the biggest, baddest guy in the room first. And if I could win with them, I knew I could win with the others. So, and it kind of snowballed into the final result. Yeah.
So very fascinating because, and I think, very relevant to this season of COVID-19. And I love how you use that term unreasonable. And then what the notes that I took were, you said, okay, this is unreasonable. You acknowledged it. You opened up yourself to say, this is unreasonable. Then you found a starting point, which gave your brain focus. So you're not staring at the abyss saying, how do I overcome this? You said, okay, there's a path forward. I got to step there. You found a pattern, and then you repeated the pattern of success.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love too about these interviews is oftentimes it's like, you did not necessarily consciously process through that, but your human nature over time has crafted a response to, I have to get to the other side of this. There is no known outcome right now. So I have to get that foothold for focus. So that was actually real. I've never thought about it that way either. And that was just like, that's like a mini masterclass right there. Well done.
Wow. Well, thanks. I didn't realize I had done it quite like that.
Genius coming through without even knowing it.
Yes, it is. But that's anybody that's listening to this. They have some way, like you said, they have some process that they built. Find where you've been successful in another part of your life and just try to use that to your advantage. If you need to consciously think of it, if you're not confident, I wasn't confident that I could pull this off at all. And I thought, well, somebody that's been doing this longer, somebody who is willing to be yelled at on the phone for an hour when they ask for these ridiculous, you let them do it. Let somebody who doesn't care about anybody make these hard phone calls. But, the process did work. So, whether you played sports in high school, whether you are really good at, going out and entertaining people at drinks at the bar, like whatever it is that you're good at, use whatever makes you successful there where you can. And sometimes that's hard at work, but your process will come out if you just, find a place to start, like you said, and, work your way through it.
It's, as you're telling that story, I had to look up the name, but the gatekeeper in those Thor movies, his name's Heimdall, the one with the sword who would open and close the portal.
Like on that bridge between
yes,
wherever they live.
Safeguarding the margin.
The older guy.
Yeah. All of a sudden, like no one would want to necessarily have to walk through the process that you did, but because you were clear on whether you want to call it the value of your role, the excitement of your role, or that language you use, safeguard the margin, this extended out from that. And you felt like this was going to be in violation of a value to you, therefore not threatening your role in terms of threatening your job, but it was threatening you, and therefore you found a way to get through to the other side. One specific question I'm interested in is, how do you start your mornings? Because maybe not morning at home, but morning at work. Are you the type of person that sits down, opens up your email, goes through, or are you the type of person that sits down, keeps that email on quiet because there's something you've got to get your focus to? Or talk me through a little bit of your routine and how you found to make this work.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, the routine does start at home because I notice, if I leave the house in a particular state, worried, frustrated, already behind, whatever that is, I carry that right into work. And then it usually spirals from there. But what I like to do is I like to beat everybody to work. I don't have young kids at home, so that I have the flexibility to do that. So I usually get into the office.
Feels awesome, doesn't it?
Yeah, about an hour and a half before anybody else.
Grant Cardone once said something like, you cannot know what it feels like to be up at 4 a.m. and knowing everyone else is still sleeping.
Yes. It's honestly the greatest feeling. That's usually, unless we've been up, late the night before, I'll usually get up around 4:30. Everything's dark, take my dog for a walk, just try to enjoy the morning. Cause I'm like, wow, this is pure peace. I walk him through the woods, let him do his business, come home, get ready, and then, jump on the road. There's rarely any traffic. I'll get to work. And what I'll do is I'll just open my email real quick, because I found that I like to know if I have two people, if they've emailed me and they walk in the office and I haven't seen their email, that could be a problem for me. So I make sure I just scroll through. Do I see their name? No. Everything else can wait.
That's good.
And so, I like to just do that if I can. But usually I'll sit down, make a cup of coffee. And the night before, I'll have written down on the piece of paper that's right in front of my desk, start here. So I already know right where I'm going to start, and I just start working on that project. And unless something has shifted in priority or importance, I just start there and start working. So I try to take a low-key start to the morning, try to not stress out. I try to know exactly where I'm going to start, what's most important, and start there and start working on it. And I give that morning time before anybody can call me, anybody can interrupt, anybody can ask me something. I give that hour and a half to that project and kind of into the morning. And then I shift because just like in your role, you're juggling a lot of different projects, you're juggling different clients, you're speaking, you're traveling, you're doing all these different things, right? So you can't work on all of it at once. So I try to, just kind of block some time and say, I'm going to focus 100% on this. And then I'm going to get into my email, maybe about 9:00. I start scrolling through the email, clicking off things that people are waiting on, questions for me, people who need to get certain things done. And I become the bottleneck. I try to get those emails out first. And then I look through my email and see if there's any projects that, my boss has, trying to work on or put through, and put my 2 cents in there. And then we do quarterly well, for me, every other week I check in with my boss. So I have certain goals that I set out for myself this year. And I work those into weekly and monthly tasks. So if it's kind of coming up to do one of those things, I give a little bit of time to that sometime in the afternoon. And I just try to start the day off strong, honestly, not distracted, fully focused. And then, distractions always come after lunch, and by 11 o'clock, the day can kind of be shot. So I really try to safeguard between about 6:30 and 11:30, and really try to get a whole day's work done in there.
It's good because it's always frustrating to me because you've got somebody like Mark Zuckerberg who's like, get all these tiny little tasks done, build some momentum. And then you've got this whole idea of eat that frog, which is get that big challenging thing done first. It's don't check your email. It's check your email. It's like, get on your phone. It's don't get on your phone. And I think sometimes people can get pulled. And I love that, in specific with your email, you're saying, hey, I don't get on it, but I do get on it to make sure that I'm not missing anything that's critical because I've understood the landscape of where I'm at. And I think that's the important thing. Gary Vaynerchuk one time was asked, Gary, is it the early bird that gets the worm or is it the late bird that gets the worm? And he said, it's the bird that knows itself that gets the worm. And I heard that coming through from you. And I find that to be one of my greatest challenges. So as we wrap up the interview part, before we get into a little bit more of the fun stuff in the fireside chat, I've got to ask what, and it does not have to be for business. What is one of the things that you've found to be most relaxing for you to bring? Because that idea of balance is so difficult to, you and I, we've both been very well connected and around John Maxwell. And he said, like, just because 3 good things happen doesn't mean that 3 bad things happen. So what is balance? But for you, as we close out, what have you found to be the most fulfilling or some of the most important things that you work into your day or your weekly routine to make sure that you can go hard at work, yet still feel like you've not lost all of yourself?
It's the seasons for me, because there are definitely parts of the previous season, probably the final quarter of last year, beginning of this quarter, where there was zero balance. I was getting up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't coming home till 8 o'clock at night, and there was zero balance. And that's not the norm for me. But I think it's important to acknowledge that those seasons happen. For me, what I do to bring balance into my life is try to get quality sleep. I usually, even though I get up really early, I try to, get in bed by 10:30 or so, 11. My wife is a night owl. She gets like this ridiculous surge of energy about 11 o'clock. She can literally be asleep in the chair. 11:01 hits. She's up. She's dancing around. She's like acting a fool. It's
so you got to be asleep before 11:01.
So I have to be very strategic. I got to find a way to go to sleep before 11. So, but I try to get sleep. I try to walk my dogs. I try to, when I'm driving home, I just try to change my energy a little bit, just say, hey, tomorrow's a new day. Yeah. I'll take care of that tomorrow. And just try to enjoy the time. I saw a Crescent Roll commercial yesterday, and it said the average American household only has 37 minutes of family time a day. Wow. So, just trying to make those 37 minutes or so that I get count. So,
and I think
just enjoy it.
And we're constantly figuring out a better, best way moving forward. Well, Nick, I appreciate you being on the show today and sharing truly some, we've had a deep friendship for many years, and I learned some things about you, and I know the listeners will love it. I look forward to catching up with you soon on the Fireside Chat.
Thanks, Josh.